everyone, welcome to the Jump Show. We're oh so close now to the pandemonium in the stands, to the cacophony of the Cheltenham crowd. Just 1 week left before the curtain raiser of the Mikey O'Sullivan Supreme Novices Hurdle and the Cheltenham Festival as a whole. With that in mind, it is our final Ante-Post episode in what has been a tremendously fun series to do, and I'm sure Jake and Dan would both agree wholeheartedly on that point. Before we get going, we'd love to reach a like goal of 250 for this final Ante-Post episode. And later on, we'll be reviewing all the selections that we put forward so far in our Ante-Post series. So do stick around and see how we're looking with our Ante-Post books for Cheltenham in just a week's time. Let's say hello to the panel. As ever, it is Jake Price and Dan Overall. And Jake, I know that the closer we get, it's not really excitement with you. It's kind of like a sort of year highlight, isn't it? It's the annual pilgrimage and the annual bums on seats, Cheltenham time, baby.
Yeah, it's getting to that time now where you just want to be there and get it started, isn't it? Like, we kind of know a lot of the information that we need to know by now. Obviously, there's a few switcheroos going on that we'll have obviously discuss a bit later on in the show. But other than that, you know, you're just hoping to get there, get all your horses there in one piece and see how we end up doing.
And yeah, I mean, getting horses there in one piece, that's the really big challenge for all of us here on the Ante-Post series. And I think some of us are doing slightly better on that front than others, but we will come to that a little bit later. Dan, how are you, mate? Fresh off your Nick Luck daily appearance in which, of course, you shone.
What I mean, why is everyone asking me on for stuff? I mean, it's been a strange couple of months. I mean, some absolute spoofer is putting up Phil Hobbs horses every other week for Cheltenham Ante-Post races that really shouldn't be on these kinds of shows. But there we are. I'm getting everywhere. I'm at Wincanton on Thursday as well, so they can't get rid of me off racing TV either. So no, it's all going well. I think, like Jake, I'm just happy. I just want to get to Cheltenham now, really. Like, I think it's almost the information overload stage to a certain degree. Obviously, you've got about 15 previews every day going on. It's kind of getting a bit, just having to cancel out some of the noise to a certain extent. We basically know what's happening. We basically just need to know the ground conditions, get the runners declared, let's kick on. It's one of those where so close yet so far, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a huge bone to pick, actually, with the declaration and entry system, but I'm not going to do that now. I'll come to it later. But I'd like to be afforded the chance to have a bit of a rant, if I may. But that will come in due course. Dan, I know that you're with Tom Stanley at Wincanton on Thursday. And I'm trying to think of the last time that you were with Tom on Racing TV, you royally just took the piss out of him.
Oh, big time, yeah. Yeah, it was nearly 3 years ago. Yeah, it was April 2022. And I've messaged him since saying, I don't think it's any coincidence that it's been 3 years since we were afforded the opportunity to work directly together. And I've given him the confirmation that don't worry, just get over Thursday and it'll probably be another 3 years and I'll see him in 2028. So he can put up with a few hours on Thursday and he won't have to deal with me for another few years.
Okay, great stuff. Let's get going, shall we? Before we do, though, we have a bit of an announcement about a Cheltenham Festival live stream special. Jake, over to you.
Yeah, that's it. We're going to be doing a live stream this Friday around 8 p.m. We're going to be doing Cheltenham live stream and we're going to be focusing on the handicaps. Obviously, everybody's already got their minds made up about the grade ones. Everyone's got their own opinions on the grade ones. We think that it's not too much worth discussing. We might have some grade one naps, but we're going to be discussing the handicaps mainly. So hopefully you guys can join us for that.
Absolutely. You know we love a handicap here. And just like the last couple of years as well, we'll be joined by the LTR, Let's Talk Racing boys themselves, Josh Stacey and Andrew Blair White.
We will indeed. And I do have a couple of these left to give away. So if you fancy a ticket for the Cheltenham Festival, make sure you join in the live stream and we'll be giving them away to some of you lucky viewers.
Yeah, I feel like the gold badges are just that little bit extra special, aren't they?
Yeah.
There's something nice and glittery about those, very Charlie and the Chocolate Factory-esque. But yeah, do get involved and please do join us on a live stream on Friday. Last year, was it last year or the year before? Was it the year before? We did one of these and it was a hilarious fun. So please do get involved and we'll try and pick some winners for you. Okay, let's go on to some Handicap Weights news. I was at the launch of the weights on Tuesday at Cheltenham and heard from a few trainers who've been allotted particular handicap marks. But to be honest, it wasn't that important or pertinent, given the fact that all the trainers I heard from were British, and most of the marks concerned that have changed are, of course, Irish. So, with that in mind, Jake, what's the latest news?
Yeah, I mean, before we get into it, Tom, is there any trainer or horse that was particularly brought up that you thought was interesting and worth mentioning?
I mean, the only one really that basically the handicappers were there, and they were asked about every race and which horse had provided the most difficulty to assess. And I suppose the one that they said gave them the most difficulty out of every single race was Kopek de Me. And I don't think that really is that surprising because it's sort of the 2025 version of Ocastle Day Mott, isn't it? We've seen it. We've seen it from plenty of other sort of similar type horses in the past. They can be almost impossible to predict.
So they gave him that's the most difficult one, and so then what they ended up doing was what they do for every French horse who comes to the UK. Then basically, they really rack their brains big time for that. Oh, what do we do? Same as we ever do? Yeah, same again. Well done, guys. Good job. Should we get a big lunch together to announce that?
Yeah,
that is literally what it was. But yeah, apart from that, there wasn't too much. I mean, to be honest, I was quite busy outside doing a couple of interviews, so I didn't really hear much of it. But that was the main takeaway. I also got the feeling that Joe Tizard thought the Changing Man had a very, very good chance, and I know that a lot of people do fancy him. He can be quite bullish about his horses, but he did seem to be particularly excited about the Changing Man. So we'll see how he gets on there.
No. We need to now that horse has been brought up. We need to bring him up.
yeah.
Has everyone forgotten this horse got comprehensively outbattled by Frero Bamboo just a couple of starts ago, and now he's a certainty for the Ultima because he won a Reynoldstown where his only rival fell and the other two didn't raise a gallop. Like, am I just he is Oscar Elite version 2, but at least Oscar Elite was a first season novice. He was I will back him place heavy. I can't see him winning.
It's funny actually because I asked Joe, like I kind of put the question to him that I started saying he was very visually impressive in the Reynoldstown, and I thought to myself, well, yeah, but he didn't beat anything. There wasn't a race, and I thought I've already started this question, so I've got to finish it. And I said, I know he didn't beat much, but he looked good. It might be the worst question I've ever asked anybody, but he took it very well. Yeah, I think he thinks that he's got that experience behind him now. He's had a few starts in which he's gone close in kind of helter-skelter type handicaps like you'll face at Cheltenham, and potentially he thinks that he's now got that win under his belt. He's got a bit of a confidence boost. Maybe he'll go and win. But I'm rather with you, Dan. I think that that place might be the best he can hope for, and yeah, we shall see with the Changing Man. Go on then, Jake. I'll leave it to you with some of the hurdlers to talk about first.
Yeah, of course. So I'll start off by saying that the hurdlers were given an average rise of £3.9 across the board. So that was pretty standard. Last year it was 4.3. So it's actually gone down a little bit, but the average over the last 5 years now is 4.1. So it's fairly in line, just a little bit lower. I think the main contributing factor to that was the fact that we've had some fairly nicely treated horses towards the top of the weights. The likes of Sander Clegane, I think he's 147. He got 0 rise from Ireland. The same as Franciscan Rock. I was expecting him to get a bit of a rise. He got nothing as well. So I think they've been quite nicely treated. Daddy Longlegs again. I mean, he obviously got brutalized from the DRF run, but the handicaps have seemingly agreed on that mark as well. So I think that's helping to keep the average rises down. There's still some badly treated horses though as well, which obviously I've displayed these on the screen, a full list of the best ones and the worst ones. But Safarere, he went up £11, but that is mainly because in Ireland they don't really look at the chase marks and the hurdles marks together like they do in Britain. So you can like Meeting of the Waters at the DRF where he was like rated 40 odd pounds lower than his chase mark just because he had shown nothing over hurdles beforehand. Tap on the Go also got £7, but he was dropped a pound just before the weights came out. So obviously that wouldn't have been taken into consideration by the BHA. But yeah, he went up £7, so they took a bit of a dim view on his form. And same with Fleur in the Park, he also really disappointed at the weekend. He also got raised £7.
Jake, sorry, I was going to say, because you mentioned Meeting of the Waters, I just had to come in because I was watching the Ultima earlier from last year, just doing a little bit of pre-match research, and I completely forgotten how well he travelled into the Ultima, and like coming to the second last, he looked all over the front two. Chianti Classico eventually obviously pulled out more. He just didn't find much. But yeah, I just thought I'd remark on the fact that he looked the winner all over coming to 2 hours. I just couldn't put it together. There
He
you go.
also looked like he'd shake up and probably win the national. He didn't do that
Mm.
either. I'm not sure he's the dourest of stayers, much to my chagrin that year.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jake. Go on.
That's all good. So the Chasers, they went up £2 this year, which again was actually lower than previous years. £3 the year before that, £4 the year before that. So a bit of a downward trend there, but it's the average over the 5 years is 2.69, so it's not too far away. Bustleton was obviously one of the nicest treated. He got -£1 from his Irish mark. Stumptown got +8. But something I did actually learn this year, which I don't know how I've never seen this before, but the Irish handicap, it doesn't actually do ratings for cross-country races. So after Vanilla won the other day, like he didn't get put up. Again, Stumptown wouldn't have been put up from his mark at Cheltenham in Ireland for winning a cross-country race. So I didn't actually realise that. So potentially the £8 is basically the £8 is basically just from his win at Cheltenham in December. So you can look at that both ways. Cletus Poole or Captain Cody got 6 and then £5. They're quite harshly treated. But again, like the horses at the top of the weights, the likes of a Croke Park or a Touch Me Not, the classy types that are probably going to go graded route either way or skip Cheltenham, seemingly have been treated nicely. They both got £0 added. So it's kind of dangling that carrot to the likes of a Gordon Elliott just to say, if you want to run one in a handicap, then we'll fairly treat them. But I don't think it's going to happen as much as the Grand Annual does look awful. And then finally the juveniles, obviously not as much to report here. Lucas Tipple only got +1. That was one of the best rises. Total Look, I think he's probably the most fancied in the market, who got a fairly brutal rise of £7. But again, he's obviously shaped in such a way that would attract the attention of the handicapper, hasn't he? So I think you can probably justify it, and you could still say that he's got plenty more to give. Out for a Stroll also got put up 7, which I think Joseph O'Brien and team would have been happy with because it puts her closer to getting into the race. But I still think it might be unlikely that she manages to get in. So
Yeah, thanks, Jake. And Dan, the one that screams, I imagine, out to you is the mark that's been given to Bustleton, because I know that you're a huge fan of his.
Well, I mean, it was just confirmation of his Grand National mark, wasn't it? Again, like a lot of these weights we already kind of knew. It does make me laugh, obviously, the British trainers that go for handicap weight reveal, and the only time it's going to be of any interest is if they've ran like at the weekend and they're just getting their getting their change mark. Like your horse was rated 140 3 weeks ago, still rated 140. It's I think it's almost gone a bit over the top, really. I mean, we love handicap reveal day, but I think a full ceremony to basically get the same information you already knew, with the exception of the Irish, is maybe getting a bit over the top. But no, Boston's got on a very good mark, and it was looking like it was going to pan out that way. And obviously, he's been a bit of an Ante-Post plunge. No thanks to me, it has to be said, in the last couple of weeks since we last did one of these episodes.
Yeah, but
Tom, the most important question actually before we move on, what was the lunch option available at the handicap weights reveal?
It was a buffet this year, and I was had to say the food was very nice.
Okay,
It was
that's
in
the
the
main reason then.
owners and trainers bit of Princess Royal stand.
Lovely.
But
I
you're,
think there's
Dan,
never been more confirmation that racing is in a dark place where it's now buffet only and not
yeah, well,
like
and
three-course set with caviar starters. Game over.
Dan, you were absolutely right as well, because half the time I was going to ask these British trainers, "What do you think of your horse's handicap mark?" And I was thinking to myself, "Well, you already known it for how long?" So I mean, there's no real point asking the question.
But the beef
But
was nice.
it was it was a good fun day mixing with the higher echelons. Um, cool. Okay, Jake. Over to you for some news updates.
Yeah, I'll leave best for last because it's the most pertinent. But Cowabunga obviously got ruled out for the rest of the season, which was a shame. He was quite high in the Turners market, would have made an interesting runner there. Delta Work as well, very sadly passed away due to colic. Such a shame. What a horse he's been over the years. Golden Ace, she pulled a muscle a couple of weeks ago. Now seemingly she's okay over that. And Jeremy Scott said today that the mare's hurdle is probably going to be the most likely option as it stands. And that is mainly because obviously Brighter Days Ahead has been confirmed for the champion hurdle by Gordon Elliott this morning. Very nice to hear that a week out. Good to have that confirmation. I think a lot of people kind of assumed that she would, but again, just great to hear it already. And then the big headline is that confirmations start on Wednesday. So I will be getting all that information out to everybody as quickly as possible.
Yeah, as you always do, Jake. That's for sure. Um, Golden Ace. I just feel they should go for the champion hurdle with her. I just think that the 2 miles is really what she wants. She wants a strong pace at 2 miles, and I know that it's going to be a tougher test for her, but I think she has just as much of a chance of getting a place in that race as she does in the mares hurdle myself. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Jeremy Scott does. I am gonna have a quick rant, and I do apologise for this, but I think it needs to be said, at least from my personal thinking. You've just said, Jake, that Brighter Days Ahead goes for the champion hurdle. We've heard that news today from Gordon Elliott. I think it's fantastic that we know this a week out, and it's a lesson that should be learnt from plenty of other trainers, perhaps one in particular. Um, I've got to the point now when I'm looking at the Betfair markets today, looking at social media, and you see Kopek Dayboard being back for the Turners, you see Final Demand being back for the Albert Bartlett. Now, I know there's a bit of uh, likely dependent on quick ground. That's partly what the thinking is behind those moves. At the same time, though, I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters. I think at this point, before the Cheltenham Festival, we need to know in the graded races, in the conditions races, which horses are going where, because it makes for so much better a product. If it were up to me, I think horses should be given two options, a first preference and a second preference, all the way up to the Cheltenham Festival until a week before, whereby at that point, trainers have to commit to one race for their horse. I think it makes a much better product. It increases excitement. And it's a bit like, if you compare it to other sports, it's not like we go into the Wimbledon or French Open with those seeded options and then draw. We all know who's going to play each other. In rugby and football matches, you all know who's going to play each other in the FA Cup, in the Premier League. And I think it makes so much of a difference and much more enjoyable product if we have full fields for the graded races a week before, 7-day declarations. That would be my change if I had one for the Cheltenham Festival. I think this every year. I think it gets the farcical point with 2 days before we still have options that can be taken by different novices. I think it's just ridiculous. So anyway, that's my rant.
And it's worth saying for those watching, this has been particularly stirred by Kopek de Board, Final Demand, and Co. with their recent market moves going towards the Turners and the Bartlett, respectively, which you have to admire because the goals of Willie Mullins. If this does happen, for him to say after Final Demand, and particularly one of Nathaniel Lacey, that he hadn't even given a moment's thought to the Albert Bartlett, and if he ends up running there, I mean, it's one of the most outrageous things I can think of in recent times. It's Again, none of this is confirmed. This is all based on moves that have been happening in the last literally couple of hours since before we started recording. There's seemingly a Sporting Life stable tour that's going to come out tomorrow. Obviously, you'll be watching this on that day. So we'll all know by then what the quotes have been that have stirred them in this direction. But you've got to imagine it's words to the effect of, if the ground starts to quicken up to an extent, we may look at stepping X and Y up in trip. It could be as innocuous as that, and it causes this effect. I mean, it happens every year. It's always a bit ridiculous. I think realistically, it's an effect of having too many races and too many options in general. I think the main solution would be to cut it to 3 days, but it's never going to happen, is it? Unfortunately. On the plus side, Jake's been smiling like a Cheshire cat with the idea that Kopek could run in the Turners.
That's every
Don't
cloud.
give me hope. Don't give me hope.
Well, that's the other thing, though. You get afforded hope that isn't there potentially. You know, you could have, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe Jake wants a bit of hope, but you know, the hope could be
just so I can lose it again, even more brutally.
Exactly.
Yeah. Man who thought he lost all hope, lost additional piece of hope he didn't know he had.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm going to write to the BHA about 7-day declarations after this festival.
I'm sure that letter will be opened and swiftly thrown away.
Okay, right. We've got to get through our selections, our final review of the Ante-Post selection we put forward for this series. So, Dan, we'll start with you. What do you make of your book this year?
It's a ragtag of misfits, this lot, isn't it? It really is. It's not been a good year on paper. I'll be the first to admit that. And I've gone quite high variance this year with the prices involved. I think the only distinct changes since we last talked about this, obviously, the first is Lowry's Bar. We have to mention it. I've just about got over it. It's been nearly a couple of weeks now since it all happened, and I was traumatized for a brief spell. Look, they wanted to run in. They were determined to run in. They ran it. They tried to enter in races. He wasn't even qualified for, despite having a bruised foot, and he ran at Kempton on ground too quick, and he bled as well. And he did very similar last year. If you look back at his campaign, I think it was about his 6th run of last year as well. He was heavy odds on for a race, bled in February, not seen again for the rest of the season. I think they're just one run too many probably, and with that bleeding now. That leaves a bit of a question as to his future, which is a shame because he's a really likable horse, but I think partly run into the ground a little bit. And the other obviously change, I mentioned it a bit earlier, was Bostleton's price has absolutely collapsed, and say that's no part to me. That's all thanks to the man that is known as Spectre, Paul Beckin, who's put him up as his big bet for the festival. They have a tremendous success rate. If you haven't seen his video with the explanation behind that, I'd recommend you check it out. It's a very good statistical breakdown as to why Bostleton was a bet. I think at 25s or 20s when he put him up. Obviously now into single figures. Interesting to see how much that price can continue decreasing. I don't think there's all that much value left at 9-1. I think we've pretty much reached at the bottom end of that, but I'm happy to have him on side. I've already said I'll see him on near the winners' enclosure.
Okay, Dan. Jed looking pretty good still, I would say. I mean, a couple of non-runners there, but generally your prices have been backed, haven't they? You've also been backed.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the book of the horses that are running. Yeah, not too much need to say. Obviously, 6.5. She's always been the captain. Is pretty much favourite for the Mares Novice herd across the board. Now that's great. Co-Victor Bold, obviously, as the boys mentioned earlier, has got this big move now back for the Turners, but I'm not giving it any hope. But yeah, he's still on there for now. We'll see what happens come Dex. Sam Majest, again, very happy with him in favourite in the Kim Muir. Haven't had confirmation of Derek O'Connor being booked yet, which is the only thing that's slightly annoying. I'd rather have that confirmation, see a bit of blue on a stricker again. But yeah, happy with him. Hopefully he runs. And then the most recent one, Transmission. This has been a bit of a move literally in the last 24 hours or so. Put him up at 9-1 non-runner in a bet, saying he was an absolute no-brainer, 5 places. And yeah, he's been duly backed into 6-1 type price now, and he's shorter in places as well. So I think there's a bit of momentum coming behind Transmission, which I kind of expected once people started looking through. And especially if we're not going to get that soft ground for Now Is the Hour.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the inevitable pile-on for Carafon that's going to come in the Martin Pipe. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, one day, Tom, one day.
Plunge on the Friday. It'll happen on the Friday.
Yeah.
I just the last thing is what I promise you I'm going to finish on this rant. I just wanted to mention one more thing. How ludicrous is it that Springwell Bay has got 5 entries? 5 entries.
Yeah, that is a bit ridiculous. Yeah.
I mean, it's just stupid. Like, he's entered in the 2 novice race. He won't run in those. He's going to run a handicap. Like, let alone he's got 3 entries in the handicaps themselves. But also, he's got an entry in the Arkle. He's in the Arkle.
Yeah, he had that great.
He's also in the Ryanair, isn't he?
Yes, he is, yeah.
Just
Matt Chapman had a great interview of AJ O'Neill on that weights reveal day where he tried to pin him down to even like 2 or 3 races, and he literally just said no, like he doesn't know. I didn't give him any inclination whatsoever. I think that is a bit taking the piss.
AJ has learned from John Joe big time there. Gives absolutely nothing away. Like they interviewed him on ITV on the morning show, and they tried to get him to because he had the 2 favourites of the Moor battle. Any bit of information, not a drop came out of John Joe. Nothing. 0. It's just, you know what you're going to get, so don't ask the questions.
Yeah, it reminds you of that famous interview that Jeremy Paxman did with Michael Howard, and he asked him 17 times in a row on Newsnight, did you threaten to overrule him? And Michael Howard refused to answer. It's just like that diplomatic political answering, isn't it? But yeah, I tried my best with AJ on Thursday and got nowhere as well. My book, I'm pretty happy at the moment. I'm obviously disappointed Olympic Man hasn't made it, but the Big Wester is now pretty short price for the Albert Bartlett, and confidence is pretty high behind her. She's into 5-1 from 12s. My other market mover is Il est Français in the Ryanair, who's 7-1 into 7-2, and it does look as though he's going to go for that race rather than the Champion Chase. So hopefully I'll get a decent book of runners. Only by Night is a slight issue because she might well go for the Mare's Chase, given the ground. I'm still holding out hope, though, she goes to the Arkle. I maintain that she'd have a better chance in that than over the 2.5 mile trip, but it's not looking so bright for me on that front at the moment. But I'm going to pretend that she's going for the Arkle.
That's sad. That is
bury our heads in the sand.
Yeah,
I'm going to pretend Larry's bar's running in the Ultima as well.
Yeah.
I want to hear it. Up.
Yes.
I don't want to hear it. Right, lads. Time for our Ante-Post bet number 8. And it's the final week this week, so our final selections. And Dan, we're going to come to you first.
And we've been continuing a theme. Obviously, I think anything's been shorter than 21, so why start now? And let's go to probably the most complicated race of the lot in the Coral Cup. But always a minefield, and one I would very ever rarely have any interest in, at least before we get entries and any kind of semblance of market structure developing. And it's an interesting race at the minute because you look at the top of the betting. To my mind, only Be Aware and Impostoir in the cluster of about 10 to 12, around 16s and shorter, look like they're going to run here. Obviously, Be Aware's been a bit of a plunge horse I put up as the handicapper to follow at the start of the season. He's a quirky old character, though, it seems. I wouldn't be necessarily in a rush to back him at a short price for a race like this. Obviously, Kopek Demi is the favourite. I would imagine he's probably more likely to go to the Martin Pipe, as would be William Mullins' normal MO. Outer Belly looks like he's going to Aintree, according to Harry Fry, and you've got the likes of Jericho Le Repenay, Langadan, Joya Machan, Company Sergeant, all probably going elsewhere, you'd have to say. So I think you look a bit further down, and Comfort Zone at 20 to 1 looks to me the one that has a lot of potential to shorten quite a bit, at least a challenge for maybe favouritism, but at least get into single figures should this race cut up as anticipated, especially with the dry forecast. It looks like we're going to have decent ground would definitely be in his favour. And I think he just has quite a nice profile for the race. He's got that blend of experience, but remains relatively unexposed, particularly over this trip over hurdles. He was a very decent juvenile hurdler a couple of seasons ago. He won the Grade 2 on Trials Day here. He has some issues thereafter, but returned late spring of last season where he was kept really busy. Never really got his conditions, I didn't think. And I think, to my mind, it was a bit of a feeling they were just kind of building him back up, having been absent for so long. Still, he seemed to see out the trip really well over Punchestown at 2.5 miles. We're not beaten far, not given a hard time at all in a deep race on his first go at that trip. Few runs again till he tried an intermediate distance, which I thought was interesting, and that came at Galway over 2 mile 6. A narrow third that day in a race that's worked out well, despite a really bad error at 3 out. The Wall Park was the winner. We know what obviously he's gone on to achieve a fair bit and now vying for one of the each-way plunges for the Stayers Hurdle. Beacon Edge was 4th. He went on to win the West Yorkshire Hurdle 2 starts later. The 5th and the 6th also won soon after. And then he ran a couple of times on the flat, when 7th in the Irish Cesarewitch. He then ran again over 2 miles in a big handicap, finally got a win that he probably deserved in that sphere. So he remained in pretty good form for the late summer and early autumn months. And we last saw him finishing eye-catching 3rd at Leopardstown over Christmas, over 2.5 miles. Again, well, there's only 3 runs over an intermediate trip. He was weighted with, he got checked after 2 out, so had to switch wide. Then he switched to the inside between the last couple of hurdles and between horses. The winner was Al Gasparo, who he would be £6 better off with here if lining up. He made all. Obviously, Parker Kings eventually stayed on into 2nd. But it was an eye-catching run, and I think it's very much left the impression on those 3 starts over intermediate trips that this horse has a big handicap in him at this kind of distance. He's still only 6 years old, despite having acquired a good bit of experience. He's been kept intentionally fresh for this as well. He is also in the Martin Pipe, but they've seemingly said the Coral Cup is the more likelier route. And you look at JP's runners potentially in this race, other than Impostoir, you imagine Nico will ride. I can't really see anything Irish that would run here. Obviously, assuming Kopek Demi would go to the Martin Pipe, that would very much open the door for potentially Mark Walsh to ride him as well. And I think if you're in a situation where you've got a horse of his nature with Mark Walsh riding, 20 to 1 now, number on no bet, I think could look quite big. I mean, you can actually get 25 to 1 without number on no bet with Bet365 if you're so inclined. But looking at the way the market is currently structured and those who I think won't run, I think he's definitely got the potential to go off a single figure price. And so I do like his combination of relatively unexposed at this trip, but he's also quite a decent amount of experience, which tends to be quite vital for the Coral Cup.
Okay, good work, Dan. I noticed that you and Jake are picking 2 of the hardest handicaps to try and work out this week. Dan, you got with the Coral Cup, and Jake, you're going with.
I'm going with the Boodles, yeah. Obviously, I've already had one swing at this with It's Gino, who didn't get entered, but that was a non-runner, no bet thing, so didn't win anything there, didn't lose anything there, so that was okay. But yeah, it's just a race that I've come back around to have another go at. This is a horse that I was on my radar for the race already, and it was potentially one that I was going to play on the day either way, depending on how the ground has come up. But obviously, as we've heard a lot in this episode, and probably from a lot of people in other previews, the ground does seem to be drying up. It's soft at the moment, but it does seem to be drying, and there doesn't really seem to be much rain around. So I'm kind of working on good to soft at the moment as obviously that'll be the starting point. I think almost guaranteed now, but that's kind of what I'm looking at, and I think that'll be absolutely perfect for this horse. But yeah, just quickly to look through the Boodles market. Obviously, this Irish form, where the spring juvenile it's just seemingly blown so many horses' marks. Like Willie Zahul 140, Naturally Nimble 138, even Wendrock, who finished like ended up finishing out the back of Italia, was fairly eye-catching, but he's been given 136. I just don't see how that's well handicapped at all. He would have been one that was well on my radar if he was rated around 130, but 136, that just seems like he's going to have very little in hand. And as I've mentioned before, he's a tiny, tiny horse as well, so he's going to have quite a lot of weight to carry. You've got Lady Vega Allen, could potentially she go to the Triumph anyway. So, Sony Bill, again, Mercia, they're all up on marks in the high 130s, which I just think isn't screaming well handicapped. Stencil's obviously the big fly in the ointment. He potentially could be fair enough treated off 135. I'm inclined to, well, I'm definitely more than happy to take him on at the price that he is, but clearly he has, a decent piece of form there. It's just whether that mark of 135 is good enough to go and win the race. Obviously, Total Look then again, one that would have been bang on my radar, but he got overbet very quickly because people saw the eye-catching run, and he's been given 132, which is no gift. So yeah, I think it's a race where you can find one at a decent price. Unfortunately, this one has been backed in literally the last couple of hours, which is a bit annoying. I don't really know why. I'm assuming someone else had put her up as well, but the horse is beyond your dreams for Joseph O'Brien. We're going to go for the Joseph O'Brien, JP McManus devil here. But
We're relying
I
on
think
Joseph to have a really good week.
literally, yeah. But I think she's just got the brilliant profile for the race. She's the unexposed Irish one, I think, because she's off a mark of 123 here. She was 117 in Ireland, so she did have a rise, but she needed enough of a rise to get into the race, and that should pretty much guarantee it. She's currently 25 on the list, so she needs three to come out to get in, which I think that should happen, no problems. But yeah, look, she's got a great profile. She's obviously come off the flat, so she's had plenty of experience on the flat, which I think is a good bonus, to be honest. The fact that she's been able to race for so long. She's had 11 races under rules in total, obviously 3 of those being over hurdles. And yeah, she's basically had her 3 spins within a month in November/December and then been put away for this. So clearly it's always been the plan. She was second behind Space Warrior on debut. She then split Total Look and Wendrock at a Navan, which obviously is probably the biggest piece of form considering what those 2 horses are now rated. Obviously, she was getting weight from them that day as the mare's allowance, but still, she was only beaten half a length into second. She had Wendrock 4 lengths behind. That was a very nice run. And then she beat Slurricane when she won her maiden hurdle at Ferry House on the 14th of December. Slurricane obviously won the novice handicap, or the juvenile handicap, I should say, that Total Look looks so eye-catching in. So she's got plenty of form already in the book. She needs to jump a little better, but I think, as I said, that the ground is going to come up perfect for her because I think she'd prefer it to be a bit sounder. She's going to have a very low weight in the race, which is again going to help her. And I really wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of headgear chucked on her first time for the race. Like that's just the type of thing that the Irish angle, isn't it? Of JP McManus first time headgear in a Boodles. I think that could be something we could easily see. She's been backed into 10-1 non-runner no bet. I think that's kind of it's getting on the shorter side. But look, we've got 1 week to go. She's a guaranteed runner. There's not much value in many of these markets, but you're still getting 5 places 10-1 each way. So I think she's a cracking bet, and she'll be the last one to add to my team.
Feels rather emotional, isn't it? The last one to add to the team. We're approaching the zenith, aren't we? Really. Great stuff, Jake. Hopefully a good week for Joseph for you both, as you say. Relying a lot on the young man, but then he is brilliant. So could be worse people to rely on, that's for sure. My final Ante-Post bet is actually going to be in the mare's chase. And of course, I am holding out a huge amount of hope that Only by Night goes the Arkle route. And I could end up with a large amount of Irish egg on my face if this all turns out to be rubbish. But Telepathy is a wonderfully game and talented mare. And so far this season, she's done nothing but improve over fences. She won her chase debut. That came at Warwick when she beat Helmwine, who actually, to be honest, has been disappointing over fences, given the fact that he looked very exciting over hurdles coming into this season. But Helmwine, I feel like his best performance came on that chasing debut when he jumped really well, didn't touch a twig, travelled beautifully, and then just found Telepathy too strong in the finish. And she's just improved ever since. She was beaten by Cherie Dam afterwards, but she wasn't allowed to make her own tempo then. She sat behind the leader. Cherie Dam made all. And I get the feeling Telepathy just needs to get into that rhythm up front. She needs to light the torch paper and make her own running. And she wasn't able to do it that day, but she was able to do it at Fakenham in the Lady Boudica. And she gave away a big weight and a huge beating to some fairly mediocre mares, but she had a very a very big burden there off top weight, and she did it really well. And then her best effort by a mile came when beating Bride's Hill at Huntingdon last time. She did that really well, and she was getting £6 from Bride's Hill, but Bride's Hill is rated 154. So she had no right to beat her at the weights and measures, but she did, and she did so emphatically as well. She jumped superbly. That's one of her biggest assets. She's such a fine fencer. And I think the biggest attraction I have about her chance is that it looks like it's going to be a decent grand festival, good to soft perhaps on the Friday, which is something we're not really used to in recent years. And if that's the case, that's going to be right up her street because she likes a decent surface. She's very good when the ground's quick. So if she can get a nice lead, which I think is entirely possible in that mare's chase, she could take some serious pegging back, and she continues to improve. And she would be a lot shorter if she was trained in Ireland and not by Lucy Wadham, that is for sure. There's definitely a bit of trainer bias going on here. So I think she's got a massive chance of putting it up to the likes of Dino Blue and Allegory de Vassy, both of whom have strong chances. But we saw that Dino Blue was able to be beaten last year in the race. And if you look further down the list, Spindleberry, I think she might like the ground a little bit softer. Limerick Lace and Bioluminescence, they've got a little bit to prove now. So I think all roads do lead to Telebathique at least running into a place, hopefully getting that win. She's 12-1, non-runner, no bet for the mare's chase, and she'll do nicely for me. Hopefully she can get that nice rhythm going and be a good tonic for the British contingent. She's about the only mare in that race with a decent chance for the home country. So fingers crossed she can put it up to the Irish in that race. That is my final selection, Ante-Post week number 8. Before we go, just a reminder, Jake, about the big live stream on Friday, 8 p.m. And it's going to be me, you, Dan, and the two boys from Let's Talk Racing.
Yeah, Friday, the 7th of March, 8 p.m. Maybe just after, we'll announce it on socials just to confirm, but that will be the time. And yeah, going to be focusing on the handicaps with the boys, so it should be a nice fun time. And also remember, you might be able to win yourself a ticket.
Yeah, flash that badge, love to see it. Okay, yeah, we'd love to get that 250 like goal on this episode, and please do remember to subscribe. We're not far away from 3,000, so that'd be quite an achievement to get there. One day we will, I'm sure. And thank you all for watching. Lastly, it's always great to have your support, and you've certainly been supportive throughout the course of this Ante-Post series and beyond, so thank you very much indeed. Until Friday, please do tune in for our live stream. It's goodbye from all of us here at The Jump Show.